Hey, Marcus said, voice barely more than a whisper. You hungry? The man looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. Marcus pressed the sandwich into his hands. It's not much, he added, but it's all I've got. The rain was cold that night, the kind of thin, needling drizzle that seeps through old jackets and reminds you how empty your stomach really is. Marcus stood beneath the flickering streetlight outside Johnson's diner, clutching a half-eaten sandwich wrapped in brown paper. It was all he had left, dinner, breakfast, maybe lunch tomorrow, and yet he wasn't eating it. Across the street, on a bench beneath the awning of a closed laundromat, sat a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were torn, his hands trembled, and despite the hunger clawing at Marcus's own ribs, something in him wouldn't let him walk away. He crossed the street slowly, nervously, every raindrop on the pavement sounding louder than it should. Hey, Marcus said, voice barely more than a whisper. You hungry? The man looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. Marcus pressed the sandwich into his hands. It's not much, he added, but it's all I've got. For a long, heavy second, there was only silence. Two strangers in the rain, one with nothing, the other with even less. Then the man smiled, the kind of smile that carries both gratitude and shame. But before that moment could mean anything, a voice cut through the night. Hey, what are you doing out here? The diner owner was standing in the doorway, scowling. We don't need your kind hanging around here. Go on, get! Marcus's chest tightened as passing eyes turned toward him, some indifferent, some disgusted. A sandwich shared had turned into a public humiliation. He turned to leave, rain hiding the sting in his eyes. What Marcus didn't know was that this single act, this small, silent kindness, was about to set off a chain of events that would change his life forever, and this was only the beginning. The streets of Greenwood, Georgia, always smelled faintly of fried chicken and damp pine after the rain, a scent that clung to the cracked sidewalks and tired storefronts like a memory that wouldn't wash away. For Marcus Carter, 14 and barely 5'5", that smell was more than just background. It was a dream he could almost taste. Every morning before school, Marcus woke before the sun to help his grandmother, Evelyn, prep food in the tiny kitchen of their two-room apartment. She'd hum old gospel songs while chopping onions and stretching $1's worth of flour into a meal meant to last days. Season with love. Baby, she'd always say, sprinkling salt like a magician casting a spell. Love is the only thing that makes empty plates feel full. Marcus believed her. He had to. Because most nights, the kitchen wasn't just where they cooked, it was where they decided which bill not to pay that month. School was the most challenging part of his day. Not because Marcus struggled academically, he was sharp, quick with numbers, and had a photographic memory, but because every hallway reminded him of what he didn't have. At Greenwood High, wealth wasn't whispered. It strutted down the halls in $200 sneakers and iPhones with cracked screens that still cost more than his rent. Marcus wore hand-me-down jeans 2 sizes too big, and the cafeteria ladies always knew to slip him an extra carton of milk, just in case. Hey, Carter, a voice called one Tuesday as he walked past the lunch table near the windows. It was Logan Whitfield, son of the mayor and self-appointed king of sophomore year. Your grandma teach you how to make water sandwiches yet? Laughter exploded. Marcus forced a half-smile and kept walking. He'd learned long ago that anger was a luxury, one he couldn't afford if he wanted to survive. But every insult was a reminder. They don't see you. They know what you don't have. When the bell rang at 3:05, most kids sprinted for the bus or the parking lot. Marcus walked in the opposite direction, to the back alley of Reggie's diner, where he worked 2 hours every afternoon washing dishes. It wasn't glamorous. The steam burned his hands, the detergent cracked his knuckles, and the cooks barked orders like drill sergeants. But from the kitchen door, he could see the magic, sizzling skillets, the hiss of onions hitting hot oil, plates leaving the pass like artwork on porcelain canvases. One night, as he stacked pans, Reggie, the owner, a barrel-chested man with a permanent scowl, called out to him. Boy, you ever think about cooking instead of scrubbing? Marcus froze. Me? Yeah, you. Don't get ideas, though. Just curious if you got the stomach for it? Marcus swallowed. Yes, sir. More than anything, Reggie chuckled. Then keep watching. Cooking ain't about recipes. It's about stories. You make people feel something. They'll never forget the meal. Those words stuck with Marcus like scripture. On his walk home, he whispered them under his breath. Make people feel something. 2 weeks later, Greenwood High announced its annual Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge, a citywide competition where students pitched business ideas. The winner got a $5,000 scholarship. Marcus spent every spare minute sketching out plans for a food truck called Heart and Soul, Southern comfort food served on a sliding scale price system, so no one would ever go hungry. He practiced his pitch in the mirror. He rehearsed with Evelyn, who cried every time he mentioned feeding kids like himself. But on presentation day, just as he stepped up to the podium, a teacher stopped him. Marcus, I'm sorry, she said, eyes darting nervously. We had too many applicants. We had to cut the list. But I submitted mine first, he said, throat tightening. I know, sweetheart, she whispered. But these kinds of competitions, well, sometimes they're about more than ideas. He never got to pitch. The scholarship went to Logan Whitfield for an app that delivered coffee faster. If you were Marcus, would you still keep dreaming? Or would you walk away? Tell us in the comments. The disappointment stung, but Marcus refused to let it crush him. He doubled down on his dishwashing shifts, saving every dollar. He read cookbooks from the public library. And every Sunday, he cooked for the local church's soup kitchen. Tiny meals that made people smile. But the world had a way of reminding him of his place. One afternoon, he stopped by the corner store after school to grab a loaf of bread. As he reached for the shelf, a white woman clutched her purse tighter and stepped away. When he brought the bread to the counter, the clerk didn't even look up. You planning to pay for that? Marcus blinked. Yes, sir. Just checking. Had a few things walk out of here this week. He placed his crumpled dollar bills on the counter. As he left, the clerk muttered, Should have known better. It wasn't the words. It was the weight behind them. Centuries of suspicion poured into a single glance. Despite everything, some moments kept Marcus going. Like when Ms. Green, his English teacher, pulled him aside after class. Marcus, I read your essay, she said, smiling. That story about your grandmother's collard greens? It made me cry. Thank you, ma'am, he said, cheeks flushing. Have you ever thought about culinary school? He laughed bitterly. I can't even afford a new pair of shoes. She reached into her desk and handed him a pamphlet. There's a scholarship program. They're looking for students with heart, not just grades. I think you should apply. For the first time in months, Marcus felt something shift inside him, a flicker of possibility. But the world wasn't done testing him. A week later, as Marcus scrubbed pots in the diner, he overheard two cooks talking. Reggie's looking to promote someone to prep cook, one said. I bet Logan gets it. Logan? The mayor's kid? He's never even worked a shift. Exactly. That's why he'll get it, Marcus's chest sank. He'd worked there for 2 years, never late, never complained, but he knew they were right. Connections mattered more than effort. Sure enough, the next day, Logan walked into the kitchen in a brand new chef's coat. Hey, Carter, he smirked. Guess we're co-workers now. Marcus forced a smile. Guess so, Logan leaned in. Don't worry, I'll make sure you get the easy jobs. Like mopping, Marcus didn't reply. He just gripped the dish sponge until his knuckles turned white. That night, lying awake on the worn-out couch he called a bed, Marcus made a decision. He was done waiting for permission to chase his dream. He pulled out a notebook and began sketching. Menus, truck layouts, ingredient lists. If no one would give him a chance, he'd build one himself. Every page was a rebellion. Every scribbled idea was a refusal to let the world define his worth. But dreams cost money, and money was something he didn't have. So Marcus started saving aggressively. He skipped meals. He walked instead of taking the bus. He even sold his old basketball to a neighbor kid for $5, and yet after 3 months he had only $47. Still not enough, he muttered one night, staring at the jar of change. Not even close. Evelyn noticed the exhaustion creeping into his face. "Baby," she said softly one evening, "I know you're trying to carry the world on your shoulders, but you're still a boy. Let the world carry you sometimes." "I can't, Grandma," he said. "If I stop pushing, nothing will change." She cupped his cheek gently. "You're already changing the world, just by being you." Those words would echo in his head months later, when the world finally did change, just not in the way he expected. It was on one of those nights, tired, hungry, and wondering if any of it mattered, that Marcus first saw Daniel. He was slumped against a bench outside the laundromat, clothes soaked from the rain, eyes vacant. Marcus had passed homeless people before, but something about this man felt different. There was a weight in his gaze, not just hunger, but heartbreak. Marcus hesitated. He was holding his dinner, a cheap sandwich he'd bought with his last $2. His stomach growled. His mind screamed to walk away, but his heart, that stubborn, inconvenient heart, wouldn't let him. He crossed the street. "Hey," he said softly. "You hungry?" The man looked up, startled. I don't want to take from you, kid." "It's okay," Marcus said, pressing the sandwich into his hands. "It's all I've got." But it's enough. As Daniel ate, Marcus felt something strange, a quiet peace he hadn't felt in years. But peace would soon turn to chaos, because the moment of kindness that defined Marcus's soul was about to put him in the crosshairs of a system that had tried to erase boys like him for generations, and what started as a simple sandwich would soon become a spark that set a whole town on fire. The night after Marcus shared his last meal with the stranger, something shifted, subtle, almost invisible, like a draft creeping under a closed door. He didn't know it yet, but the ripple had already begun. Daniel had vanished by morning. The bench was empty. The rain had washed away every trace of him, except the memory of that hollow smile and the way his voice cracked when he'd whispered, "Thank you." Marcus tried to push it from his mind. There were dishes to wash, assignments to finish, and bills piling up. Life, for people like him, didn't pause for kindness. But 3 nights later, Daniel returned. Marcus was locking up the soup kitchen after his volunteer shift when he heard footsteps behind him. "Didn't mean to scare you," Daniel said softly, hands raised in surrender. He looked cleaner now, same worn jacket, but his hair was trimmed, and he had a faint smell of soap. "You again," Marcus said, blinking. "Thought you left town," Daniel smiled. "Guess I had unfinished business." They talked for nearly an hour on the cracked church steps. Daniel asked questions, not the usual polite kind, but ones that burrowed deep. "What's your dream, Marcus? What would you do if nothing was holding you back?" "Why food?" Marcus laughed nervously. "You sound like a therapist." "Maybe I am," Daniel said, but his eyes betrayed something else, something heavier, older. Before they parted, Daniel handed Marcus a crumpled $10 bill. "For the next sandwich," he said. It wasn't much, but it was the first time anyone had given him something without expecting anything in return. The following week, Marcus noticed something odd. Each time he left the diner after work, a black sedan idled at the corner of Maple and 3rd. Always the same car. Always the same man inside, pretending to read a newspaper. At first, he thought he was imagining it, but when the car followed him 2 blocks one night before turning off suddenly, his gut told him otherwise. He mentioned it to Daniel the next time they met. "Probably nothing," Daniel said too quickly. "Just keep your head down." "Do you know them?" Marcus asked, narrowing his eyes. Daniel hesitated. Too long. "No, of course not." But Marcus caught it. The flicker of recognition in Daniel's gaze before he looked away. Something wasn't adding up. Over the next month, their meetings became routine. Twice a week, same bench, identical 2 paper cups of coffee. They talked about life, injustice, food, and dreams. Daniel listened more than he spoke. But when he did speak, his words cut deep. "You ever think the system was built to make people like you tired before they ever get a chance to win?" "All the time," Marcus said. "That's why I want to build something different." A place where no one feels small. Daniel nodded. Then let's make it happen. Marcus laughed. Let's? You don't even have a place to sleep. Don't worry about me, Daniel said, sipping his coffee. Just focus on the plan. It was the first time he'd said we, and that single word ignited something inside Marcus. A belief that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't fighting alone. Together, they started sketching out the idea for Heart and Soul 2.0, no longer just a food truck in Marcus's notebook, but a real community kitchen that would feed anyone, regardless of their ability to pay. They planned menus using cheap, scalable ingredients. They mapped out potential locations. They even calculated startup costs, a number that made Marcus's head spin. $30,000, he muttered. I'll be 80 before I save that. Daniel leaned back. You're thinking too small. Money isn't the hardest part. Belief is. Belief doesn't pay rent. No, but it makes people want to help pay it. That night, Marcus stayed up past 2 a.m., staring at the sketches scattered across his table. For the first time, his dream didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt like a plan. A week later, Daniel showed up with something unexpected. A flyer for a community business grant competition offering $20,000 for a youth-led social impact project. This is it, he said. You're shot, Marcus's heart raced. But then he read the fine print. Minimum age, 18. I'm 14, he said flatly. Daniel shrugged. We'll find a workaround. Like what? Lie? Call it bending the truth? Or better yet, get someone to represent you. Marcus frowned. Who? Daniel smiled thinly. I know a guy. That was the first time Marcus felt fear crawl into the space where hope had been. Who was this man? How did he know a guy? Why did he care so much? But the hunger to change his life was louder than the doubt. Okay, Marcus said finally. Let's try. It didn't take long for people to notice Marcus spending time with a stranger. His classmates whispered. His boss at the diner asked questions. Even Evelyn grew uneasy. You don't know this man, she warned. People don't just appear in your life for no reason. He's helping me, Marcus insisted. He believes in me. People believe all kinds of things, she said. Doesn't mean they're good for you. Marcus brushed it off. But deep down, a seed of suspicion had taken root, one that would grow in ways he couldn't yet imagine. 2 weeks before the grant submission deadline, Marcus's world imploded. Police showed up at the diner one afternoon asking questions about a missing person. The description? White male, mid-40s, last seen near the laundromat with Marcus. The interrogation was humiliating. They searched his backpack. They questioned Evelyn. They even asked if Marcus had any gang affiliations. It turned out Daniel wasn't missing, but he was definitely wanted for questioning in an ongoing investigation. They wouldn't say what for. That night, Marcus confronted him. Who are you? He demanded. What's going on? Daniel sighed, eyes heavy with secrets. I can't tell you everything, not yet. But I swear I'm not who they think I am. Then why are they looking for you? Because I know things they don't want me to know. What does that even mean? Daniel put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. It means the truth's bigger than both of us. It wasn't an answer, not really. But it was enough to keep Marcus in the fight. A few days later, just as Marcus was finalizing his grant pitch, Logan cornered him in the hallway. Hey, Carter, he sneered. Heard you're hanging out with criminals now? Marcus's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Oh, come on. The whole school's talking about it. Guys wanted by the police, and you're playing business partners. Logan smirked. Here's some advice. Stay in your lane. People like you don't build businesses. You wash dishes for people who do. It was a throwaway insult, but it cut deeper than any before, because for the first time, Marcus wondered if Logan was right. Was he being naive? Was this entire dream a setup for disappointment? The night before the submission deadline, Marcus sat alone at his kitchen table, staring at the empty form. His hands shook. His chest felt tight. Everything he'd worked for, the sketches, the meetings, the hope, felt like it was collapsing under the weight of reality. Then a knock on the door. Daniel stood there, soaked from the rain, a small envelope in his hand. What's this? Marcus asked. Your future, Daniel said. Inside was a completed application, polished, professional, perfect. The name of the project, Heart and Soul, A Kitchen for All. I filled in the parts you couldn't, Daniel said. All you have to do is sign. Marcus hesitated. If I sign this, and something goes wrong? It won't, Daniel said firmly. But if you don't sign, nothing will ever change. The room was silent except for the rain on the window. Marcus stared at the paper. His hands trembled as he picked up the pen, and with one shaky signature, he crossed a line he could never uncross. A week later, the email arrived. Congratulations. Heart and Soul has been selected as a finalist. Marcus stared at the screen in disbelief. Out of hundreds of submissions, his project had made it. It wasn't just a dream anymore. It was real. But the celebration didn't last long. 2 days later, a local news report aired. Unidentified man linked to recent whistleblower case spotted mentoring local teen. The grainy footage showed Daniel and Marcus leaving the soup kitchen together. Overnight, Marcus went from inspirational kid to suspect associate. School officials called him into meetings. Sponsors withdrew support. The diner suspended him, pending investigation. It felt like the universe had turned against him. Why didn't you tell me? Marcus shouted at Daniel the next time they met. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? You ruined everything. Daniel's eyes softened. No, Marcus. This isn't the end. It's just the storm before the change. The grant committee called. They would still let Marcus present his idea, but only if he severed ties with Daniel immediately. Choose carefully, the director warned. One path leads to opportunity. The other leads to trouble. Marcus stood at the crossroads of his life. On one side, safety, a chance at success on the system's terms. On the other hand, loyalty, standing by the man who believed in him when no one else did. That night, Evelyn found him staring out the window. Whatever you decide, she said quietly, make sure it's a decision you can live with, not one they forced you into. Marcus nodded. He already knew what he had to do. He closed the laptop. He deleted the committee's email, and he walked out into the night to find Daniel. The rain had returned, heavier now, as if the sky itself was trying to wash away his doubts. Marcus found Daniel where it all began, on that same bench outside the laundromat. They gave me a choice, Marcus said. Daniel didn't speak. And I made it. I'm not walking away. For the first time, Daniel smiled. Not the tired, broken smile of a man lost in the world, but the knowing smile of someone who'd been waiting for this moment all along. Then you're ready, he said. Ready for what? For the truth. And just like that, the story Marcus thought he was living cracked wide open. The sandwich was never just a sandwich. The dream was never just a dream. And Daniel was far more than he seemed. What came next would shatter everything. The day of the Youth Impact Forum dawned under a sky that felt too calm for what was about to happen. Banners fluttered outside the Greenwood Civic Center, cameras lined the entrance, and inside, hundreds of people filled the auditorium. Business leaders, city officials, media crews, and a handful of student finalists ready to pitch their dreams. Marcus wasn't one of them. He had forfeited his place the moment he refused to abandon Daniel. And yet he was here. Not as a competitor, but as a witness to something he didn't fully understand. Daniel had told him only one thing the night before. Be there. Front row. Whatever happens, I don't leave. The stage lights buzzed as the event began. One by one, polished young entrepreneurs strutted across the stage with confident smiles and rehearsed pitches. Apps to optimize grocery delivery. AI-powered tutoring platforms. Subscription boxes for dogs. But halfway through the program, the event coordinator's tone changed. Next, she announced, voice trembling slightly, we have a special presentation. Not on the original schedule. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The lights dimmed. A single figure walked out from backstage, coat buttoned, face composed. Daniel. Marcus's heart slammed against his ribs. Cameras swung toward the stage. Journalists scribbled in their notebooks. Whatever was about to happen, it wasn't part of the plan. Good afternoon, Daniel said calmly into the microphone. My name is Daniel Cross. Some of you know me as a drifter, a stranger, maybe even a fugitive. But that's not who I am. The room held its breath. For the last 3 years, I've been working undercover as an investigative journalist, documenting patterns of systemic racism, economic inequality, and institutional abuse in small-town America. And Greenwood, and his gaze swept the room, is one of my final chapters. A wave of gasps broke across the audience. Phones came out. Live stream started. Daniel gestured toward a giant screen behind him. What I'm about to show you is not theory. It's a fact. The screen flickered to life with hidden camera footage. A diner owner calling the police on a black teenager for lingering. A school administrator is shredding scholarship applications from black students. A police officer using racial slurs during a traffic stop. Each clip cut deeper than the last, evidence of a town's rot laid bare for the world. Then the footage changed. The following clip showed Marcus, soaked by the rain, handing over his last sandwich. The moment that had started it all. "His name is Marcus Carter," Daniel said, voice trembling now. 14 years old, dreams of becoming a chef, volunteers every week at a soup kitchen. And despite living below the poverty line, he shared the only meal he had with a stranger. The crowd was silent. This boy was humiliated, profiled and dismissed because of the color of his skin and the size of his wallet. And yet he represents something this town and this country desperately needs: unconditional humanity. The camera found Marcus in the front row. He froze as hundreds of eyes turned toward him. Evelyn, sitting beside him, reached for his hand. "Stand up," she whispered. He did. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then rising, wave after wave, until it filled the room. But not everyone was clapping. From the second row, Mayor Whitfield shot to his feet. "This is outrageous," he shouted. "You can't come here and smear this town with doctored videos and half-truths." Daniel didn't flinch. "Independent legal experts and national news outlets have verified everything you see here. And it's only the beginning. You're a fraud," the mayor spat. "And this boy," he pointed at Marcus, "is nothing but a pawn in your little publicity stunt." The crowd erupted, some booing, some cheering. Security moved closer to the stage. Reporters shouted questions over one another. Daniel leaned into the mic, voice suddenly cold. "If telling the truth makes me a fraud, then maybe you should ask why the truth is so dangerous to you." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "In this folder," Daniel said, "are documents linking city officials, including Mayor Whitfield and several school board members, to discriminatory hiring practices, illegal budget cuts targeting black neighborhoods, and falsified police reports. These have been submitted to federal authorities." Gasps, screams, chaos. Whitfield's face drained of color. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "No," Daniel said, stepping closer to the edge of the stage. "You will," he turned back to the crowd, "because this is no longer just about Greenwood. It's about every town that pretends racism is history when it's still alive in its policies, its budgets, and its boardrooms." Then Daniel did something no one expected. He stepped aside and gestured toward Marcus. "Marcus," he said gently, "this is your story. Tell them what you want the world to know." Marcus's knees felt weak. His heart thundered. But he walked to the stage anyway. Every step felt heavier than the last, like he was carrying generations of silence with him. When he reached the microphone, the room went still. "My name is Marcus Carter," he said quietly. "I'm not a pawn. I'm not a headline. I'm a kid who just wanted to share a sandwich." He paused, swallowing hard. "I never thought that would matter. I never thought I would matter. But if one small act of kindness can bring all this out into the open, then maybe it's time people like me stop being invisible." He scanned the sea of faces, some ashamed, some furious, some crying. "We're not asking for charity. We're asking for a chance to dream, a chance to build, a chance to eat at the same table without being told we don't belong." The room exploded with applause, louder, deeper, more honest than before. Reporters pushed closer. Cameras zoomed in. It wasn't just a speech. It was a declaration. As Marcus stepped back, a man in a navy suit stood up from the back row. He introduced himself as Anthony Brooks, senior editor at the New York Ledger. One of the nation's most prominent investigative outlets. Mr. Cross, he said, addressing Daniel. We've been following your work. And Marcus, your courage is the story. We want to feature this in a national expose. The room roared again. But Marcus didn't hear the noise, only the beating of his own heart. The same boy who'd been mocked, profiled and ignored was now standing on a stage where the world was listening. And this wasn't the end. This was ignition. By the end of the night, the Greenwood mayor had stormed out. The police chief was under investigation. Several board members resigned before the evening news even aired. Outside the Civic Center, hundreds had gathered, holding candles, chanting Marcus's name, demanding justice. For Marcus, it was overwhelming. He'd never seen this many people care about anything he was part of. But somewhere beneath the chaos, beneath the fear and the noise, was a quiet truth. All of this, all of it, had begun with a single sandwich. It was no longer just a story about hunger. It was a story about humanity, and the world was finally paying attention. The storm didn't end when the lights in the Civic Center dimmed. It was only the beginning. By morning, Greenwood, a sleepy town that had never made national headlines, was the lead story across every major network. Undercover journalist exposes racism in small Georgia town. Teen's act of kindness sparks federal probe. Marcus's face, that shy, disbelieving smile, was everywhere, and with the spotlight came the reckoning. Mayor Whitfield resigned within 48 hours, citing personal reasons. The police chief was placed on administrative leave pending a civil rights investigation. The Greenwood School Board, the same institution that had denied Marcus his scholarship pitch, announced a sweeping review of its admission policies. After leaked emails revealed discriminatory practices. For decades, these men had operated unchecked, their biases woven into the town's fabric like invisible threads. But now, every decision, every policy, every act of quiet cruelty was being dragged into the light. The diner where Marcus had once scrubbed dishes shut its doors permanently after boycotts cut business by 80%. Even the corner store clerk, the one who had clutched his wallet when Marcus reached for bread, posted a public apology video, shaky-voiced and tearful. But not everyone wanted redemption. A small but loud group of residents blamed Marcus for ruining Greenwood's reputation. They called him ungrateful. A troublemaker, an agitator. Marcus heard it all. And for the first time, it didn't crush him. It clarified him. Offers poured in from across the country. Speaking engagements, scholarship programs, nonprofit partnerships. Primary culinary schools reached out to invite Marcus to apply. Publishers wanted him to write a book. Documentaries were pitched, but Marcus said no to all of it. "This isn't about me," he told a reporter. "It's about kids like me, the ones still invisible." With Daniel's guidance, now openly working with the New York Ledger, Marcus launched the Heart and Soul Initiative. This grassroots program provides free meals, mentorship, and entrepreneurship training to underprivileged youth in rural communities. The first pop-up kitchen opened in Greenwood within 3 months, funded entirely by donations from people who had seen his story online. Every Saturday, Marcus and Evelyn were there, serving plates of collard greens, cornbread, and love to anyone who needed it. And each meal came with a note printed on the bottom of the paper tray. "You are seen. You are worthy. You belong." Some of Marcus's former tormentors showed up too. Logan Whitfield, once untouchable, now avoided eye contact when they passed in the street. Months later, he approached Marcus quietly during a volunteer shift. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Logan said. "But I want to help. However I can." Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then start by listening." Even Reggie, the diner owner who had ignored Marcus's dreams, donated equipment to the new kitchen, an unspoken apology wrapped in stainless steel. But Marcus never sought vengeance. The power he had discovered wasn't about destroying people. It was about transforming the space they once controlled. Word of Heart and Soul spread, first across Georgia, then across the South. Soon, cities from Chicago to Birmingham were reaching out for help replicating the model. National media followed the movement's growth. Universities began incorporating Marcus's story into courses on social justice and civic engagement. And in one of the most poetic turns of all, the very grant Marcus had been denied was rewritten to remove its age requirement. The committee invited him to apply again. He declined. "Kids shouldn't have to prove they deserve a chance," he said at a press conference. "We should be building systems that give them one." One rainy evening, nearly a year after that first sandwich, Marcus found himself back on the same bench outside the laundromat. The streetlights still flickered. The sidewalk still smelled faintly of pine and fried chicken, but everything else had changed. Daniel joined him, hands in his pockets, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Funny how the world turns, huh?" he said. Marcus chuckled. "Back then, I thought I was just feeding a stranger." "You were," Daniel said, "and you still are. You're feeding a future." They sat in silence for a while, watching as a line formed outside the Heart and Soul pop-up across the street. Families, teenagers, elderly folks, all waiting for a warm meal and something deeper, dignity. That night, Marcus walked over to help serve meals. One boy in line, skinny, nervous, no older than 13, reminded him of himself. Marcus handed him a plate with a warm smile. "Hey," he said softly. "You hungry?" The boy nodded. "Yeah, I haven't eaten all day." Marcus knelt so their eyes were level. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're not alone anymore." And as the boy walked away with his first full meal in days, Marcus realized the truth. The story wasn't ending. It was multiplying, meal by meal, life by life, heart by heart. In the end, this was never really a story about a sandwich. It wasn't even just about Marcus. It was about the quiet power of humanity, the kind that refuses to disappear even when the world tries to make it invisible. One small act, a boy giving away his only meal, unraveled decades of silence. It exposed corruption, transformed a community, and built something bigger than any law or policy ever could: hope with teeth. And here's the truth most people overlook. Revolutions rarely start with speeches or protests. They begin with choices, small, inconvenient, deeply human choices. Marcus didn't plan to change the world. He chose kindness over fear, generosity over scarcity, and courage over despair. And in doing so, he reminded everyone watching that justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a soft voice saying, "You can have my sandwich." But this story isn't finished, because you might write its next chapter. Somewhere near you, someone is invisible. Someone is hungry, for food, for dignity, for a chance. And the question is, will you walk past them or will you stop? Will you choose comfort or will you choose courage? Because if a 14-year-old boy from Greenwood, Georgia, could change the course of an entire town with one simple act of compassion, imagine what you could change. What if this happened in your school, your workplace, or your neighborhood? Would you step up or stay silent? Tell us in the comments below. And if Marcus's story moved you, share it. Because someone out there might need the reminder that small kindness can still start significant revolutions.